here is my CABcast for the KVAC presentation. It's a newscast production that shows what we were given money for in order to try to change Jenkins and have a little outcome. CABcast was a newscast production that the students came up with. They would write the newscast, they would record it, come up with the topics, come up with everything. So it was meant to try to build up a positive outcome and positive environment for Jenkins Independent Schools. So here is a little project summary. If you look to the right here, this is our CABcast logo. It was designed by the students also. They designed this, came up with it, and our digital image was made by our art class upstairs. They made this digital image for us with their software and sent it to us, and they actually made, I think, like 4 different ones similar to this, and we voted on it and chose this one. Some of the project summary was one of the big things we wanted to focus on was to work on blending learning environment. What were we going to do to try to incorporate and go over and increase our learning and blend it with not just book learning or whatever? So we wanted to do it so it was more of a hands-on, because the students seemed to enjoy that a little more, hands-on learning. And it blended not only textbook and hands-on learning, but it also incorporated technology and incorporated their writing skills. They had to think outside of the box, so their creativity was enforced. We also had to look at how we were going to implement this strategy. What were we going to do? The kids were always complaining that they didn't know what was going on at school and didn't know the outcomes of different functions. So we thought that a newscast would be perfect. And the kids got really excited when I told them that we were going to be doing this, and they were all eager to get involved and start doing this. Some of the resources we needed, we sat down with a group of students. They came up with ideas that we would need to make this happen. They were real adamant about picking out which ones they wanted, what brands, what type, and all that stuff. And I made a list. We decided what was important, how many we needed, took the list down to our central office, and they ordered it for us. And we got the products in rather quickly. The students were super excited when they saw the boxes come in. So we got to open all those, go through those and see what was needed, how to use them. Then we focused on our research question, and I'll go over that in just a minute. We had to decide what was this going to focus on. Then, how are we going to determine success? What are we going to do? Just because we produce this, is it going to be successful? How are we going to determine success? How are we going to measure that outcome? What were we going to use to say, this project has been beneficial, it's served its purpose, and when we done that, we came up with these results. The blending learning environment, one of the big things that I could tell as a teacher, as well as other teachers, was especially when the COVID-19 hit and we were forced to go to virtual, we nor the students had enough training with technology to support that type of learning in that way of life. And that's something that we really need to work on, because as we all know, it's going to hit us hard, and that way of life is becoming more and more dominant, and our technology is becoming more available for us to use. So we have to up that training and get us involved in not just things that we can use at school. So we've got to be exposed to different things, and because of our area, southeastern Kentucky, and Jenkins especially, we don't have a lot of access to technology. So one of the big things was having different things allowed for the students to use, and actually allowing them to jump in and use those. So we wanted to make sure that we were incorporating a lot of technology so that the students were exposed to that. And with that exposure, they would feel more comfortable using anything, and feeling the comfort they would want to try these. Of course, because of our area, we have a lot of lack of motivation and support from within ourselves and within our community. So what our big thing was, we were going to focus on making sure that the students started to get motivated internally. Like they didn't need to receive the A to get the motivation, they needed to receive the motivation from within them and see that success was within them. So instead of having a cheerleader that cheered them on all the time, they became their own cheerleaders. And that was a big thing that we noticed that we needed to work on, was that they didn't have this push to do well and succeed because they didn't have anybody behind them. And we needed to make sure that we ensured them that they were the ones that needed that motivation. Of course, no one wants to accept the responsibility for their own learning, even teachers. And so, one of the big things was we put them in charge, and the success of this was completely on them. If the pictures weren't taken, the newscast wasn't written, it wasn't recorded, it wasn't edited, it was all on them. And they had to find time to do all this, so they had to accept that responsibility. Like, yes, I'm ready to stand up and do what I'm supposed to do. So they became the ones in charge, and then when they got excited about this, it was easier to let them know that, hey, you've got to learn this on your own. And we didn't do a specialized course on how to use camera, how to make the background. We let them try it out and see, and they just were exceptionally well about wanting to do it on their own, and you could see them grow, and it was wonderful. One of the big reasons we wanted to make sure that we focused on the newscast was because there's such a dislocated relationship between students and teachers, students, teachers, and the school, student, teachers, and the community. We don't have this back and forth communication. It was kind of like colliding, and we wanted it to be more open so that the students, teachers, school, and the community could have this communication out there that they could easily get information from, and that way it was more open and inviting for all of these to work together. And when you work together in these type of relationships, of course, you see more success. So that was one of the big focuses, was trying to get that relationship opened and embrace that relationship between all of them. Now, this is what we did for implementing our strategy. Well, first thing we did, of course, was set goals. We needed to make sure that we were producing. When we first started, we set out to set a goal of producing one per week, just because we needed to see if we could get it done, how much time it would take, and the more practice you get, the better off you're going to be. So our goal was to set it out and prepare it for the week. And for the first 3 were supposed to be for a week, and then after that we were going to set it up to do it daily. We were going to push ourselves so that we were producing more instead of less, and we didn't want to continually do the same thing, so we set goals so that we had short-term goals, long-term goals, and to get those completed. We did those before we started. Then, we had to figure out how we were going to accomplish the task, and I obviously misspelled the word accomplish. I apologize. I'll try to fix that before I send the PowerPoint. How are we going to accomplish those tasks? Well, we had to make sure we set the goals, break it down into smaller tasks so that we could accomplish each of those. And the students did that. They were very well pushed on trying to make sure they wanted to do it because they started having a little bit of fun. We made sure that the students were in charge, that they were the ones who were leading, they were the ones who were in charge, they were the ones to finish the product. And what we did is we gave them ownership. We put their names on things. It wasn't the teachers, it wasn't me, it wasn't myself writing this, it wasn't myself getting pictures, it was the students. So that if something didn't get done, they couldn't blame anybody else but themselves. Then we had examples. We looked at examples of local schools and schools that were magnificent at doing these things, and we looked at what they did and tried to find things that we liked and disliked so that we could keep or change or use and modify those. And we also looked at our own local news and what we thought would be something we would like to use. And the students did that. They didn't really care about the current world events because they said, that wasn't what they were into right now. So we didn't put those in there. But some of the big things, like when the COVID was going around, they didn't want to focus on that. They said because everybody knew about it, and it was something they didn't like to talk about. So what they focused on were things that was just relevant to them. Then we gave them multiple mediums of learning. What are they going to go through? How are they going to learn this? So we gave them ways that was just hands-on. We gave them options of learning. We read how-to guides. We looked at different options of YouTubes, we looked at recordings, we talked to local news reporters. We have all that out there so that these students had more than one way of learning, because some kids learn real well, some kids don't, from just books or texts or on their own. So we had it to where students were learning on their own, students were learning from other people, students were learning from having it handed to them, and some of the other students were bringing in what they knew and sharing it with others. So it was every type that we could possibly get at that time pulled together to learn how to use this. Now, again, the resources that we were needed, we sat down, went through, just wrote down like basic ideas really quickly. Then we started looking on Amazon to try to find exactly what we wanted, and they would come up with everything that they needed. They found the editing software that we had on campus was something that they thought that they could use easily, and it was easier to get it than try to get another piece of software, because our district doesn't allow for us to add software to our different computers and things, so it was easier to use what was already available. We looked at, of course, the online examples. All that was free. So all these resources were very easy to come up with. It was at our fingertips, thankfully now, since the technology is there, it's at our fingertips. We also were able to take our equipment needs down to central office, and Mr. Barnett helped us order all that for us and get it sent to us rather quickly. So we appreciate him, by the way. Then our research question that we focused on was, what is the effectiveness of a blending learning environment, and how will that promote future learner success? Well, we had to look at that and say, the way that our schools are run now, we're more open to technology. So we had to look at that and figure out how effective that blending learning environment was going to be and how it was going to promote later. Well, we, got to where we just thought the more you're exposed to it, the better off it's going to be. The more comfortable you are, the more, more apt you are to embrace that learning. And that's what we found out, is when the kids just were able to just try, that they just excelled at that. Sorry, I don't know what just happened, but I lost part of it. So anyhow, then they became the teachers. When they finished off writing the thing, then they were showing other people, and those kids became leaders, and you could tell they were learning even more by teaching other kids. So it was great to watch that success too, and they knew that somebody else was depending on them to teach them, so it was great. Then we have, of course, tests and quizzes to make sure that they understand how the equipment worked, and self-assessments. That was the big thing, is having tons of self-assessments to see if they were feeling comfortable and understood what was going on. So that was a big part of the success, is how did they feel they were doing, because we wanted them to internalize that motivation and that success more than somebody else telling them what to do, because later on in life they would see this and be able to understand success in their eyes and not let somebody else determine their success or their worth in life. Now, how are we going to measure that outcome? Of course, the grades, completed newscast, student-led videos. All of these videos were student-led. They came up with it on their own. We did a little mock video that, I walked them through some things just to let them play around, and it didn't count. It was just to walk through the steps. Then, of course, the surveys, we asked other students, how did they like the newscast? What did they think about it? Were they looking forward to more? Then, of course, the goal sheets, the things that we set forth. Were we accomplishing everything that we set out to do, and was it beneficial? And, of course, student pride. How did they feel about their school? Did being able to give these little shout outs and things, was it something that gave them more pride at this school, so that we can build up a positive school culture, which we definitely, desperately need. And of course, our audience. We got to see the kids react to how this presentation was going, the newscast. We got to see them in the we got to see them watch the newscast, watch the playbacks, and it was great to see that, to watch them and see them be informed of the things that were going around school, and sometimes even seeing themselves on camera and having that little like, hey, look, let's give a little shout out to this person. That was awesome, and the kids felt that. Hopefully, this is, I think, maybe the first or second newscast that we did.
Hey Cavaliers, welcome to Cavcast. I'm Savannah.
And I'm Josh.
We have a busy week this week with our games. Tuesday, our girls play Harlan, and it's our last home game, so come out and support your girls. Also, our middle school volleyball team is playing this week with our games. Tuesday, our girls play Harlan, and it's our last home game, so come out and support your girls. Also, our middle school volleyball team is playing.
Okay, see, we've done this. I wanna, they've done a really good job. I wanna take you out here to the end, I think is the blue. Okay, I have no idea what's going on with this. It's skipping and stopping and doing whatever, but anyways, the kids had a blast. Had a lot of outtakes, and it was just funny because they had a really good time. And I really just want to thank Quebec for allowing this opportunity to happen because the kids really just went above and beyond, and it just touched my heart to watch them succeed and do what they wanted to do, and see them learn and just take pride in what they were doing. It's just wonderful. Um, I do want to say though that one of the things that was a negative part was we had trouble getting backing with our school because we had full intentions of putting it in the cafeteria for every day so that everybody could see what was going on and highlight things, but it was just there was a lot of obstacles in the way to get there. So having that support from the administration was something that was lacking. But the kids had fun, and watching them learn, do, and make these videos was uh, was an experience that I've got to say I thank you for. I think they had fun, they learned a lot, and I'm glad that I've got to do this. So again, I want to thank you, Quebec, for allowing this to happen. So hopefully, all in all, this went well. Have a wonderful day. Hopefully, we can do something next year.